El señor que viene desde Sudáfrica y para abordar el tema de la experiencia en RSA para lograr una planta injertada de calidad en uva de mesa. Mr. Anrew, we would like to invite you to do your presentation. Por favor, un fuerte aplauso para Anrew Teubes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. Hopefully my English will be good enough for the translators to understand as well. When Dragomir asked me to present something here about plant production in South Africa, I thought about it a long time, and I decided the best approach will be to give you a bit of a snapshot about the South African industry, how it works, how it operates, which organizations are part of it. So I'm going to do it very practically, giving a bit of background with a lot of slides and pictures. So feel free to stop me for any questions if you want to as well. I will focus first of all on a bit like that. What is quality plant material? I think we need to know what that is. Secondly, all the phases that we'll go through in plant improvement, virus cleaning up to the final product. The South African model I will describe to you. Then I'll be looking at the basic nursery protocols, how we do things in South Africa. And then the types of vines that we sell, potted vines, one-year-old grafted vines, and so forth. And then a very important part of quality plant material is also the care that's taken by the grower afterwards, planting procedures, and how they do everything. So let us start with quality. 4 things are important. First of all, the phytosanitary standards that you all know is the virus status, bacteria, fungi, whatever. Secondly, the physical standards of the plants that are actually supplied to a grower, looking at the root development, the strength of the graft union, the shoot development. And these plants must specifically conform to at least a minimum set of standards. The third thing is that when you buy a plant, you must know it's true to type, the variety and the rootstock. And this whole system we must try to do in a traceable way. These 4 aspects of the system is basically taken into account when the South African plant certification scheme was developed. If we look at the scheme itself, in South Africa the production and the distribution of plant material is all governed by the South African Plant Improvement Act, which is by law, and then that was further refined to the South African plant certification scheme for vines back in 92, 93. What's very important to know is that the grape industry itself is responsible for the implementation of the scheme. This means that the growers, the nurserymen, research institutions, the Department of Agriculture, all of them are then combined into association we call the Vine Improvement Association, and that is a very strong body that actually has to manage the industry's plant material. The most important aspect of that Vine Improvement Association is the companies called Plant Improvement Organizations. These are private companies that is accredited by the Vine Improvement Association, and they are responsible for the development and the distribution of certified plant material to nurserymen. They do, first of all, virus elimination of a new variety, for example. From there on, they establish nucleus units, foundation nursery units, and in the end, mother units. And the mother units is the bulk of the material, and from there plant material is distributed to commercial nurseries. So that's the basic structure of the certification scheme. The first phase that we call the Nucleus Unit is basically where the plants that have been freed from virus and have been indexed to be free from the important viruses, they are being kept in an insect-free greenhouse that we call a Nucleus Unit. You can see a few pictures of that. It has a virus netting, there's entrance control. So that is actually where you have your safety deposit box in the bank, where we have the clean material kept year on year. From there, the budwood is taken to be grafted in field units that we call a foundation unit. That is basically the first phase of multiplication, because in the Nucleus Unit you only have 4 plants of a variety, not more. Here you can have up to 100, 200, 500 vines. What is actually important to know, in South Africa, because we have phylloxera where everything is grafted, so we normally do field grafting of these buds onto already established rootstocks in a foundation plot, which is also of the same status. Very important to note, in the foundation unit, we grow the plants without fruit to limit the risk of infections of viruses through mealybugs, for example. But every plant in that unit, every year, we test individually for the presence of leaf roll and fan leaf virus, which is vector transmittable. Every plant we have to test. We have similar units for rootstocks. We call that foundation rootstock unit. Because ELISA indexing is not successful in determining the presence of leaf roll in a rootstock, we have to plant these as isolated as possible. So it's isolated units from where we collect then the rootstock of the foundation. The foundation materials coming from the scion unit and from the rootstock unit are then grafted and planted in what we call a foundation nursery. This is also an isolated nursery very far away from other grape areas. And the plants coming from the foundation unit is then used to establish commercial mother units. Now a mother unit is a commercial plot of grapes on a commercial grower's farm. But these units also have to comply with a certain set of standards. The inspectors of the plant improvement organizations that handles all these materials, they have to do at least 2 inspections in a year. First one is during summer. That's obviously identify any mixing of varieties that may occur, but also disease presence and especially mealybug presence. If mealybugs are found in the plot, immediately it's written off as a mother block due to the risk of leaf roll infections. And the second is during the fall, the autumn period, where they do specifically spot checks for leaf roll virus, but also they do visual inspections for other diseases. At the end of the season, when harvest time of material starts, scion budwood and rootstock material is then provided to commercial nurseries from where commercial nurseries graft material, they plant it in their nursery, they uproot it the next year, and they sell it as certified grafted plants. Every bundle carries the certification label, and what's important on the certification label is it gives you the clone of the varieties, the clone of the rootstock, the sources from which plant improvement organizations it comes from, and also a certification number of the nursery. So that is where the traceability system really comes into play. Because if there's any problems anywhere with the plants involved, then it can be traced back to a specific rootstock block or a specific scion block. The management and the controls, for me as a commercial nurseryman, sometimes I get sick and tired of it because it's heavily controlled, but there's a reason for that. All the material that is received by our nursery, all the inventories, I have to supply to the Office of the Vine Improvement Association. That is being verified by the plant improvement organizations. So in the end, it's a very closed and strict system. That's why it's called certification. Also, not one single vine can be sold unless the inspectors of the Vine Improvement Association come to inspect every single combination that we want to sell and certify it for the phytosanitary aspect and also the physical standard of the vine. I'm going to skip that slide. Then basically the nursery protocols, what do we do? What I'm going to do in this section is I'm going to focus on the things that we consider important from a quality point of view, especially from the sanitary side. The phytosanitary issue, the viruses, these things, this is all handled by the plant improvement organization, the certified plant material that we are using. But now when we come to the practical side of what do we do in the nursery, aspects like the trunk diseases, that's nowadays a very, very important part. We have to try to manage that ourselves to the best of our ability. So that is why I'm going to focus on the sanitary side especially. First of all, it starts with the harvesting of our rootstock material. The rootstock material comes from mother blocks, but because some of the, what we used to call the black goo fungi, they are carried naturally in rootstock material, the best way we've seen and research have shown immediately after pruning to apply Trichoderma species on top of the pruning wounds. That gives you the best control of further infections. From there, all material is received at the nursery, pruned, cut into shorter pieces. Obviously, when you store big volumes of material, you have to prune it. And everywhere that you make a pruning wound, there's a risk of infection of some kind of fungi. We use mostly spore kill terminator, it's quaternary ammonium products for soaking material overnight, and then afterwards a 10-minute dip in a Rovrol Kaptan type of mix before going to cold storage. Always use clean plastic material before going into cold storage to make sure it's sterilized as far as possible. And during the grafting program, obviously we try to sterilize all our surfaces, and a very important part is hot water treatment of grafting material before grafting. That we do at 50 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. And then on the grafting side, just to show you, in South Africa, 95% of all grafted material produced and sold is still grafted by hand, which is the long whip method, and about 10%, maybe even less, is grown as omega grafting. That's the two important grafting techniques we use. Then after grafting, trying to sterilize further, dipping all the material in Kaptan mixes. If we use sawdust, some nurseries use peat moss, cocoa peat for their callus medium, everything is sterilized prior to use. And then when we plant the nursery, it's very difficult to manage any infections from the soil of fungi into the material during the planting process. So the best way we try to do is to make sure before planting that we have a very good callus formation at the base of the rootstock, to have a limited chance for fungi to penetrate at the pruning wound. And also, obviously, to make sure we have healthy nursery soil. Don't plant soils that are excessively wet. Make sure it's properly rested, organic matter contact. Try to make it as healthy as you can. Then, field plantations in South Africa, 90% is also made by covering the graft union after planting. And the reason for that is, in our conditions, we do struggle with a lot of strong winds in the period after planting. So we have to protect the unions. That's why we still cover the unions with soil after plantation. We also do potted vines. Potted vines goes into the greenhouses and are then later on sold to growers after 3 months, after 21 days of acclimatization. The field nurseries are grown in the summer, trying to control diseases as far as possible, as well as weeds. And then at the end of the season, at the time of uprooting, this is a very important aspect of the grading process of the vines. Can you play the video clip from down there? You will see there, every vine has to have individual testing. The rootstock must be bent in 2 directions without breaking. Root system is checked, the shoots are checked. That is what we call the grading, and this is a very important part of the grading process. Sometimes we, especially when we use rootstocks like Ramsey, which is a very important one, it forms a very brittle graft union and it breaks easily. So normally when we are grading Ramsey, our managers rather not be present in the room because we break too many. Okay. After the vines have been graded and certified before selling, vines that goes to cold storage is then washed free from soil, and we dip it again in fungicides and we pack it in sawdust into plastic bags, which goes into cold storage. Most vines are actually sold from our premises, not from cold storage. So we normally pack them in sheds like this, which have a permanent sprinkler system in the roof. It's closed up, so it gives water 10 minutes every hour, 24 hours a day. So vines stay very, very moist, so there's no risk of drying out. And then vines that are exported obviously has to be cold storaged and treated a bit differently. Drago also asked me to focus specifically on the type of plants that is being produced and sold in South Africa. If we compare the 3 different products we use, the green potted vines that you obviously know well in Chile also, it's a young vine. We sell it after 3 months, and normally it's ready for collection around about October. It is a weaker plant, obviously, because it's only 3 months old, and it develops slowly, especially in cooler regions. So we normally only have a very small crop in the second year. I'm talking from a table grape point of view here, because table grape growers normally have a crop in the second year after planting. But it's a small product in our industry. Less than 5% of all vines sold are potted vines. And normally we only use the potted vine for the production of a new variety, for example, when there's very small amount of budwood available and every single bud wants to be utilized immediately. So that is the only reason really why we would use a potted vine. When you go to 1-year-old dormant vines, which is by far the most common product, it's a very strong plant, as you know. It's very well rooted, so it gives fast development. You plant it already in July, August, in the end of the winter. So you can get a crop of 12 to 15 tons per hectare in the second year already on a dormant vine. And it's by far the biggest volume of all vines sold in South Africa is a 1-year-old nursery vine, and it's definitely preferred by the clients. Then plants 1-year-old dormant vines that we sell in containers. That is a very, very small amount of vines, not an important part. It's a bit stronger than a potted vine, but it does not have the same performance as a 1-year-old dormant vine coming from the field. So it's something that's not used commercially in South Africa at all. Then something apart from the nursery, and I'm speaking now more towards the grower point of view. How must vines be handled in the field after plantation? We have specific protocols that we supply to clients. Most important of all, vines need to be put in water. When it leaves our premises, it must be kept moist at all times. So planting from water is important. Normally roots must be cut in order to fit properly in the holes for planting, but never cut it too short. If you look at that picture of the spade, that's about 30 centimeters. So we cut the roots at about 15 centimeter length, not shorter than that. When we put the vines in the hole, very important, the roots must hang freely in the hole. It mustn't be bent down like the Americans call it a J root, I think. And after planting and covered, the union must only be 4 fingers above the ground. It's very important that the vine must be planted as deep as possible with the roots, but to ensure that the union must not be close to the surface. And then most important of all, proper watering after planting. Really saturating the soil to make sure all the water replaces the air around the roots. That is vital for plantation, otherwise the vine will dry out. Can you play that video also? I don't know. I took this picture recently just to show you how planting should be done. The depth of the hole, you can see, is important. There's a specific person holding the vine, and then a very important part, using a fork to loosen up the sides of the hole, because sometimes with a spade you can compact it. And then afterwards, properly compacting the vine with the soil to make sure you get the air out. Important also, the girl holding the vine while they're covering it must be at a specific height. That's very important. And then afterwards, you can see someone coming with a spade, just covering up the holes to make the soil level. So for us, the plantation process, handling the vine, how you plant it, it's really, really important. And then just a few mistakes that we come across often in the field. Some growers collecting vines, they're collecting from our premises, they have to drive 100, 150 kilometers, and they don't properly cover the vines before transport. When the soil is too wet, we are situated around Cape Town in a winter rainfall area where it can be very wet in winter. So if you make the holes with a spade and the sides compact, and you don't properly loosen the sides of the holes, then the vine tend to end up with its roots inside the hole. It's like a pot plant, basically. Then also, that picture I mentioned, when they put the vines in the hole, not letting the roots hang down freely, but it's bending like that, that's definitely a no-no. And over the past few seasons, the use of plastic mulch has increased. Obviously, it's important for control of weeds. But then seeing a dripper line lying on top of the plastic mulch, or even microjets on top of plastic mulch, it cannot wet the plant properly. In summary, I'd like to end up with saying that every grower or farmer, he must understand the value of the planting material that he's using. Plants are not cheap anymore, it's expensive. Secondly, he must understand the procedures that went into production, the viruses and the diseases that can affect him on the performance, and also he must understand the processes involved in the improvement of the plant material. Then after he understands that, he must understand you have to maintain that after plantation. And with that, I'm talking about control of mealybugs for the transfer of leaf roll virus, nematode control. I know Ziphinema index is an important nematode in Chile, which transfers fan leaf virus. Then Soil health, the trunk diseases is a big issue, and everything you can do to improve health of the soil will help with that. Reducing stress conditions, that is very important on the vines. So if you purchase plant material, you must purchase it from a source that you can trust. Especially when there's a small amount of materials available from new varieties. Over the past years, new varieties has become the name of the game. So there's not a lot of budwood available, so you tend to take anything where you can get it from. But it's very important that we have to look at that. That's very important. Trust the source of material. And then maintain a very close relationship with your nurseryman. I know in any farming community or any farming operation, the relationships of trust is very important. So between grower and nurseryman, it's very important to maintain that trust, so that what you buy, you have trust in what you're getting. Thank you very much.